What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, December 11th, 2020. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today, and Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So we're going to do news for about half an hour. Then we're going to open the phone lines. And then, of course, in hour number two, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us with her unique perspective on the world. So let's just get right on into it. As of right now, 21 states have signed on with the Texas Supreme Court lawsuit. And we're talking about basically 42% of America is now on this lawsuit right now. And apparently there are now 22 states that have filed a countersuit with the Supreme Court saying, don't let this happen. And their arguments basically come down to the one we heard over in Pennsylvania. Yes, the laws may have been broken, but you really don't want to open up this can of worms. Which is kind of a lame excuse, and I don't think the Supreme Court's going to do for that. Anyway, Texas has this morning filed a reply brief with the Supreme Court because they basically, they filed their lawsuit. Then there was the countersuit. Texas has had a reply brief. And we're expecting a decision on this pretty much any time, and we'll see if it's going to happen during the show. But they're in a bit of a rush here because the Electoral College does meet next week, and unless there's an injunction to delay the Electoral College, they will certify for Joe Biden, and it's just going to be that much more pressure on trying to get back to an honest result from this last election. Now, Texas reply here basically came down to they're calling for an injunction because the defendant states, meaning the battleground states that are the subject of the lawsuit, they have not and cannot defend their actions, meaning the documented cases of election fraud that are taking place. Now, interestingly enough, even though the governor of Pennsylvania is moving forward trying to certify for Biden, Pennsylvania House leaders have filed their own brief to support Texas in the Supreme Court lawsuit against Pennsylvania. So it's really getting very, very intense out there. Now, there's a story that is coming on out of TruePundit.com about how apparently the FBI has widened their criminal probe into the 2020 presidential election fraud, and they are now tracking 500,000 manufactured and phony ballots for Joe Biden. And the states in play, of course, are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan. The fraud is massive, and the court, they can't ignore this. If they do, it destroys the legitimacy of the entire, not just the court, but the government itself here. All right, so getting on to some other political news here while we wait for the Supreme Court to tell us what's going to be happening here. Apparently, Biden's brother, James Biden, is also under a federal investigation. And we know that the Hunter Biden investigation began all the way back in 2018, and it was being covered up by the corporate media and even by Attorney General Barr to help Joe Biden in his quest for the presidency. And again, it's a reminder of just how corrupted the entire system has become. Now, House Republican Conference Chair Representative Liz Cheney and Representative Ken Buck today are leading a group of lawmakers sponsoring a resolution in the House that backs efforts by President Trump regarding the voter fraud. And they're out there saying we have to protect the integrity of our elections, and they're absolutely right. And it's like I was telling Dan on the phone yesterday, the issues have gone way beyond Donald Trump himself or Joe Biden himself. The issue is whether we, the American people, are still exercising control over the government through fair, honest verifiable elections. And if we don't have that, if there really are phony and fraud, then we're living in a dictatorship with elections that are just as much a fraud as we find in any third world country. So it's still out there. Another story here from the New York Post has come on out, chastising the corporate media for covering up the Hunter Biden story until after the election. And of course, the New York Post had their Twitter account shut down for 2 weeks, and their Twitter posts spiked about this. Meanwhile, the corporate media was saying this was all a hoax, it was all debunked, and so forth. Now they're actually having to cover it. Fox News covered it. Even CNN had to cover it after all that time of saying it was a hoax and there was nothing there, and they're having to deal with it. So again, they're shredding their own credibility in the eyes of the American people. Now, getting on over to Fanggate, I guess is a good name to call it here. This is about that Chinese spy. And apparently this is extending beyond Swalwell now. Apparently Pelosi and Schiff's hands are caught in the cookie jar. And we know that Pelosi was scandalized by having a Chinese spy on her staff a while back. And apparently Pelosi is out there trying to defend Swalwell and keep him in his position on the Intelligence Committee. And a lot of other people are saying, no, he can't, he's compromised. Swalwell himself is refusing to either confirm or deny if he went to bed with this Chinese spy. But it is a huge, huge stink, and it's continuing to grow. Over in California, Governor Newsom is increasingly concerned about recall efforts within the state, and he's saying right now it's a long shot, and he's survived 5 recall attempts so far. But apparently, the latest recall is really building over all the lockdown situations. And apparently Newsom backed off one of them and told people of California, yes, it's okay to go to the beaches. So the people are fighting back, and that's actually a very good thing. Now, on Wednesday, Rush Limbaugh made a comment on his show, which I agreed with, that this country may be headed to a breakup, that we're going to start seeing states secede, or we might see the entire nation balkanize here. And apparently Geraldo Rivera came on out declaring Rush Limbaugh's talk as absolute treason. And so Geraldo is out there trying to protect the deep state and the nation as it is right now. But I think pretty much everybody understands there needs to be a major change going on. And I'm hearing a lot of talk, which I don't approve of, by the way, of violence, of shooting, of fighting, not just here on the website and in the email and the radio show, but just people out on the street talking. I heard one just this morning about, the need to fight for honest elections here. Okay, over in Portland, in the autonomous zone, rather, apparently the district attorney, Mike Schmidt, has dropped all charges against the protesters who were arrested on Tuesday as part of the blockade and the ensuing scuffle with the police. And the occupied zone is now being referred to as the Red House Autonomous Zone. Not entirely sure why that is, but we reported earlier in the week about how the protesters are stockpiling spike strips and other weapons. It looks like there's going to be a civil disturbance there on a major scale. All righty, let's talk about COVID-19. The news continues to come on out, and it is not good at all. Apparently, GlaxoSmithKline is now delaying their vaccine until the end of next year because clinical trials have shown a poor immune response in the top priority older people. And apparently this is considered a devastating blow to the British government. And apparently the GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi vaccine did not appear to work well in middle-aged and elderly people, which are the ones most at risk of dying from something that they're going to blame on COVID-19 anyway. Down in Australia, something more alarming is happening. They have scrapped their billion-dollar coronavirus vaccine because trial participants started testing positive for HIV. Now, one story said that these HIV positives were false positives. Another story said there is a concern that this vaccine may actually be infecting people with HIV, that it may have HIV inside it, whether it's deliberate or a laboratory contamination. I mean, if you're in the medical industrial complex and you're in charge of a pharmaceutical company that the new business model is to sell more medicines to people, having them constantly sick is obviously a huge profit center. And I know it sounds cynical. It's not the first time it happened. Back in the 1800s, there were 3 doctors who were thrown in prison because it was found out they intentionally infected the town where they worked in order to generate more business. Now, this next story is probably going to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, because it certainly did for me. Apparently, CNN has actually issued a story saying that we should not be alarmed if people start dying after taking the vaccine. And they're saying the deaths probably won't have anything to do with the vaccine, but, you know, because the vaccine is going to people who are already frail, you know, some of them are going to die anyway of other causes, and we shouldn't be alarmed if people are dying you know, in association with the vaccine. Now, this is coming from the same corporate media that insisted that everything from, you know, the common cold, you know, to halitosis is actually COVID-19. And now they're going the other way and saying, well, you know, no reason to think the vaccine is harmful here. Up in Canada, pardon me, yesterday, Brenda McPhail, the Director of Privacy, Technology and Surveillance at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, was on 570 News talking about recent remarks from Ontario's Health Minister Christine Elliott. They're going to issue immunity passports so people can prove they have received the vaccine. This is something that we're seeing pop up all over Europe, here in the United States, and now in Canada, where you're going to have a card that you will have to show to go shopping and to other communal places to prove that you've had the vaccine. And it's another coercive tactic to get around the requirement that, you know, you have a legal right to refuse the vaccine. You know, we got the Hague Convention, the Nuremberg Convention, all kinds of laws. The United Nations are saying you cannot be injected with something without your consent. And so now they're trying to get around informed consent with these coercive measures. All righty, here's another story. This is from the Daily Mail here, and it's yet another study, this one in Denmark, saying that masks don't stop you from getting COVID-19. And the experts writing the report say there's a troubling lack of evidence to justify wearing them. And we have talked about this before. When you look at the space in the weave of these masks compared to the size of the virus particle itself, it's like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence. And so they're saying that all of these governments around the world that are making mask wearing mandatory, you know, it's really pointless here. And of course, the governments are saying that, well, the masks must be better than nothing because they block at least some of the virus being exhaled or inhaled by the wearer. One of the things that's always bothered me about these masks, they're supposed to be trapping this very deadly virus, and yet they're not being treated as biohazard. They're just going into the trash cans, at the stores, at the library, at the church, and the rest of it here. Now, there's been yet another whistleblower come forward talking about what is called a biohazard nightmare at the Merck vaccine plant. And apparently the cleanliness and sterilization is really not up to par, and that this could be the result of serious contamination of the final product. So again, rush it out, get the money here. On a more economic point of view, apparently the coronavirus stimulus bill, they're running out of time and they still are not seeing eye to eye, and it all comes down to Nancy Pelosi, who is willing to let people suffer economically because she wants her liberal pork barrel projects taken care of, and the Republicans are saying this has got nothing to do with COVID-19. It has nothing to do with the American people who have suffered the economic consequences of all the lockdowns. But Nancy wants what Nancy wants and thinks it's a force of nature. All righty. Over in Europe, the European Commission has followed up on a meeting with their president and Britain's Boris Johnson with threats to refuse British air, road, and rail traffic unless the country agrees to submit to EU what they call contingency rules. And they're basically, Europe is saying that British Airlines would be prevented from landing at European airports. British road hauled freight would be prevented from crossing the borders. And the Eurotunnel Railway would be closed by the EU if the British government fails to meet Europe's demands by the 1st of January. So they're playing hardball out there. Okay, now, apparently over in Finland, there has been an incident at the Olkiluoto nuclear plant, and they're calling it a serious operational disruption involving high levels of radiation. And apparently they did an emergency shutdown on Thursday shortly after noon. So they scrammed the reactor, and hopefully there wasn't a major leak, but apparently it was a big, big problem with their reactor over there. Okay, here's an interesting little article. This is coming out of informationliberation.com, where people are taking a look at YouTube's new rules for permissible content, and basically saying YouTube is now banning the majority of Americans from expressing their political views. And CEO Susan Wojcicki, I think, basically last Wednesday said YouTube will ban all content alleging widespread fraud or errors in the 2020 election. You can almost smell the panic over there. You know, when they hit that panic button and dumped all those extra ballots in to win for Biden, it caught everybody's attention, and it's opened up a real mess. And social media is out there doing the best they can to try and squelch it down. So for right now, rely on email, and even that's being filtered, because somebody sent me a bar chart comparing COVID-19 with past pandemics going back to the 1918 Spanish flu, and showing it just isn't that big a deal. And apparently that mail got blocked going to a lot of people. So, I mean, they're just out there, and again, the fastest way to bring down a dictatorship is to force them to act like one where everybody can see it, and that's exactly what's going on now. Over at Facebook, they could be forced to sell off Instagram and WhatsApp under this lawsuit that is backed by 46 United States and federal regulators, which are accusing Facebook of running an illegal monopoly. And I think it would be great to break them up as well and sort of get a handle on some censor-free social media. That's really what we need right now. And speaking of the censorship, it's not even being done by Americans. Apparently, they have these centers they've set up in India and the Philippines where all the traffic is routed through there to censor American voices. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We seem to be in the middle of a perpetual war to get the truth out there to the American people so that they can make good choices. And you've already seen how the corporate media, social media, they're all aligned to push this lie that Joe Biden won this election honestly and fairly. And obviously the evidence is out there. They're not reporting on it. So places like Republic Broadcasting and whatreallyhappened.com are where you're going to find out what's really going on. And so we need your help. We really, really do. The postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Getting on back to the news here, I was talking a little bit earlier in the show about finding a way towards maybe censorship-free not just social media, but even search engines. And there's a lot of search engines out there. Some are good, some are not so good. Many of them actually go through the Google system, and they're just sort of a front-loading operation. But apparently, Apple is getting ready to launch their own search engine in direct competition with Google. And apparently they have ramped up their search bot activity. And so those bots are out there scanning the websites. And the increase appears alongside pressure from the UK Competition Commission to break up Apple's multi-billion-dollar sweetheart deal with Google. The deal ensures that Google is the default search engine for Apple's iOS devices. And many are now anticipating that Apple is on track to launch its own search engine soon. Well, I thought iOS had the Safari browser as part of the package that came with it here. All righty, now from the world of SQL, which I'm having to deal with right now with what really happened, apparently more than 85,000 SQL databases are currently on sale on a dark web portal for the price of only $550 per database. Now, this is being reported by ZDNet, and they were tipped off by a security researcher, and it's part of a database ransom scheme that's been going on for pretty much the entire year. Hackers break into SQL databases, they download the tables, they delete the originals, and they leave ransom notes behind, telling the server owners to contact the attackers to get their data back. So if you're doing something with an SQL database, make sure you keep those backups current here. And there's yet another malware campaign. It's blasting the internet with malware that basically blocks the security of web browsers, adds malicious browser extensions, and makes other changes to your computers. This is coming from Microsoft yesterday. And Adrozec, which is what Microsoft has dubbed the malware family, relies on a sprawling distribution network comprising 159 unique domains, with each one hosting an average of 17,300 unique URLs. The URLs, in turn, host an average of 15,300 unique malware samples. This is huge. This isn't somebody in their basement. This is organized crime size here. And apparently the campaign began back in May and hit a peak in August, where the malware was observed on 30,000 devices per day. So And it amazes me that the government doesn't seem to think that this is really a problem. Another story, this one is coming out of Forbes, no less. Apparently, Israeli surveillance companies are siphoning masses of location data from smartphone apps. And, this has been a banner year for government snoops. They're looking at location data being grabbed by smartphone apps. Apparently, Customs and Border, the FBI, the U.S. military, and other federal agencies are keen buyers, which is upsetting privacy and human rights watchdog. And the outcry this week led both Apple and Google to get rid of apps containing location grabbing code from the Western Virginia-based provider Xmode. And you probably saw those announcements saying these apps are being deleted. And Apple's new requirement is that all apps must have an option to turn off the sharing of location data. Right. So apparently up in Canada, they have this COVID alert app that they put on out and said everybody should have on their phone so you know if you're getting near somebody with COVID. And it's got some problems. We'll fill you in on the rest of this after we come back. We're going to open the phone lines now, area code 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're finishing up on this story. Apparently, there's this COVID alert app up in Canada, and it developed this problem where it wasn't actually notifying people that they had been exposed to somebody that was exposed to COVID. And the idea is this app would tell you you've been in close contact with somebody suspected of having COVID, you need to get a test or you need to self-isolate, and it really wasn't working. And the company that put it out, the federal agency rather, they released an update on November 23rd and announced it fixed the problem. Apparently, it did not. They fixed it on the Android phones, but not on the iPhones. And apparently, this COVID alert is designed to take note when two users spend at least 15 minutes less than 2 meters apart. And if a user later tests positive for COVID-19, they can use the app to anonymously notify contacts of potential exposure. Alrighty, we've got callers waiting on the lines. The lines are loaded up here, and we're going to go to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? One thing, too, folks. I don't take my phone with me anytime I go inside anywhere, store, restaurant, or anything else. I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to be traced. I don't want to be contacted, and I certainly don't want to be tested. Okay? So I suggest you all do that unless you really believe this COVID scam. And that brings me to the vaccines.
Yes.
Listening to InfoWars, I've heard some other things about that yesterday. Already they're having big problems with the vaccines.
Yes, they are.
Britain, people almost already from the from allergy reactions. Now in Britain they've warned people, anybody with allergy, you shouldn't take it. And by the way, that's an out right there. If they start giving you a hard time, just say you have an allergy. I'm allergic to globalists. I said that yesterday.
I'm allergic to bovine excrement.
And I'm also allergic to people like Bill Gates and Fauci.
Yes.
So, like I said, the other thing is now we find out that there's HIV in these vaccines. There's aborted babies vaccines. Australia, I understand, has suspended the whole thing right now with the vaccines because they found out about the HIV.
Yes.
This is evil, Mike. These people who put this thing together are stark raving evil and greedy, combination of both. When you look at the big pharma, these pharmaceutical companies put this together, and people like Bill Gates and Fauci who have encouraged this, and we've got to put a stop to this. And it's a shame that the FDA put this thing out today. Yesterday said it's okay. It's not okay. I think people got to understand something. Like I said, I'm still supporting Trump. Hopefully the Supreme Court will reverse this thing and all. But I'm not happy with Trump. Okay, why?
Yes.
Because not only some of his foreign policy decisions, but he has pushed this vaccine. He's bragged about it, and I'm disgusted with some of his supporters I've seen online, like praising him for this, including people like the Breitbart people.
Yes.
Breitbart is. I've known him for a long time already. Breitbart is a fraud. That they're nothing but a bunch of Zionists. They're they're mainstream media, basically. The corporate media. They're sponsored by corporations, just as Fox News is. The fake news network. So it doesn't totally surprise me. But I just want folks, don't take this vaccine. Don't be stupid, please. And also another thing is, with these masks they're putting on kids and stuff like that, tell them they got to go to school to wear masks. They got to wear masks. This is child abuse. It's got to stop, Mike.
Yes.
People got to get together. Enough is enough. I'm not calling for violence, I don't think, but I do think we need civil disobedience, strong civil disobedience, mass refusal to go along with them, businesses to open up despite what the government tells them, and if they come down with the police, people resisting, like locking arms in front of these businesses, saying, no, you're not going to do this, provoke them. Make them make the first move. If something's going to really happen, God forbid, we do have some kind of a civil war or something like that, at least make sure that they're the ones that provoke it. Just like we're in Appomattox there, when the British fired the first shots.
Yes.
Okay. Make them do it. Don't start it, in other words. But if we have to do it, we'll finish it. Okay? God forbid that happens. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we can do this peaceably. I think this thing is falling apart on the globalists. I think they're starting to fall flat in its face. Like I told you the other day, I think their next step is going to try to push some false alien invasion on us, because I think this. And by the way, I managed to get on YouTube today. I got a new video. I got 2 strikes, but at least I got this one on. And in this I say, I now do think it was a biological weapon. But what happened is, once it got into the open air, it started to lose its strength almost immediately, because it's being that it's not natural, and it started mutating to become much weaker. Mm-hmm. I think they wanted to have something much stronger, much more deadly, pushing us. Okay, and I think they're desperate now. They realize it didn't work, but they're trying to scare what out of people anyway.
Yes.
And this is what this is their MO, and we got to stand up to them, make it clear we're not afraid, we're not cowards, we will fight, we will not comply. All right, and that's about all I got to say. All right, I know you got a lot of other callers.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I would like to say, just to start out really quickly, I agree with Mark on just about everything he just said on COVID.
Yes.
But to go further, what I wanted to call up and talk about was, what we're seeing now is the FBI having refused to do this and refused to that. I'm talking about I want to get into the intelligence community and their criminality. And if you bear with me for 2 minutes, it started out, as far as we know, the partnership between the intelligence community and organized crime goes back a long time. During the Second World War, the OSS treated with Lucky Luciano for the invasion of Sicily, invasion of Anzio and Salerno. We know that the Kennedy administration, Bobby Kennedy, treated with the mob to try to assassinate Fidel Castro, and probably other people too, but at least Fidel Castro. We know that they've been involved, the CIA has been involved in heroin smuggling during the Vietnam War, cocaine smuggling during the Iran-Contra thing. We know that they're into heroin smuggling again in Afghanistan. We know that. So now I want to get into what we don't know about their budget. It's only what's published we know, but only the intelligence community has an idea what their real budget is, and they don't know what the black budget is sometimes. And then there's what they do that they can make on the side, like smuggling, like
Yes.
murder for hire. It's interesting that the CIA has duplicated what the NSA's snooping capability is,
Yes.
at huge expense, right? It's not their charter, but at huge expense they duplicated it. And you're talking about all the ransomware and everything else, and how they're not interested in it. I'm sure they're making huge money off that. So they have this empire. We know that they interfere in the elections. We know that they unconstitutionally tap our phones and blackmail people. And then, of course, there's the Seth Rich thing that they sat on for 4 years.
Yes.
There's the fact that they didn't talk about Hunter Biden. They didn't talk about Joe Biden being a total crook, which he's made a career of being a career corrupt politician for 47 years. He's gotten fabulously wealthy. Or the Clintons, or any of the other guys, or the Bushes for that matter. And that George Bush was a director of the CIA and involved in Iran-Contra. I mean, this is really bad, and I don't believe we'll ever get back. And I believe they're involved with the COVID thing, as Mark said. I believe they're up to the ears in it. I also believe it was a biologically engineered thing, and even if it was accidentally released, what are these labs doing, making this stuff with our money? And they are. You release it, it destroys the economy, and then of course they own the press, or the press owns them. I'm not sure which. The banks own them all, but
Yes.
nevertheless, we cannot be. There cannot possibly be a democracy in this country when you have a bunch of billionaires controlling, Jewish billionaires controlling all the press, a bunch of banks who can print money out of nothing, never be audited, and in partnership with this secret police, this heinous criminal secret police, which frankly is owned by the banks too. So anyways, that's my thing for the day, but I don't think there's anything bigger. I think all of it's related, from COVID to Seth Rich to surveillance to you name it. They've got their hand in the elections. They've got their hand in everything. So,
well, it is a vast
that's
network. It's as complex as the Gordian knot, and ultimately the same approach to undoing it that Alexander the Great used may be necessary. But it is, I think this last election, really, I think, woke a lot of Americans up to the reality of what this nation has become. And again, we're seeing signs of panic in the corporate media and social media. They're trying to basically keep this all tamped down, and it's not really working. People are looking for alternative means to communicate with each other. And again, we may wind up going back to what the Soviet citizens used, fax machines, because those are very, very hard to control and censor.
Mike, it may be, who knows, related, but I tried all morning to get onto your site and couldn't do it because you were under attack. What happened with that?
Yeah, we had a huge DOS attack earlier today, and we're working on getting the site smoothed out. And if Trump does prevail in the Supreme Court, we're going to build a whole new site next year. But obviously, if Biden gets in and he's going to shut down the independent media, then there's not much point in trying to build a new site.
Yeah, let's see. I agree. Let's say a prayer, Mike. Bless you. Bless Claire. Have a great weekend, okay?
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jim in New York. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. Yeah, it looks like they're going to go with the, you're going to need a vaccination certificate.
Yes.
And if you don't have it, you won't be able to go to a supermarket. You won't be able to go to a doctor. You won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to hold a job. So it looks like that's the end game. No matter who the president is. President Trump talked, you've heard about Operation Warp Speed?
Yes.
Yes, so apparently he's going to have the military assist in distributing the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Biden will do the same. So no matter who's in office, these operations continue, no matter who the president is. Did you know that Biden is going to keep Dr. Fauci
Yes.
in his position? Did you know
Mhm.
that?
I knew
So
that.
I think these positions are picked by someone else besides the president. It's like, this is who's going to be in this position, and that's it.
Okay.
And I think Fauci is picked by the deep state, and whoever the president is has no choice in it. So I think that's where they're headed with this vaccine agenda.
Yes.
You know, and all these guys, I remember back in April, these silly guys calling in. You know, I got to mention your trash and New Yorkers. You know, hey, how's your mask doing? You know, no matter where you live in the country, you have to wear a mask.
Yes.
So they were trashing New Yorkers, especially the New Yorker who lives in North Carolina. He was trashing New Yorkers. But guess what? Now the whole country has to wear masks. So, you know, this silly trashing of people in other states that's been going on your show for 8 months, it really is infantile.
Yes, it is.
Don't they feel embarrassed now?
Mm-hmm.
They have to wear masks now. So they were trashing New Yorkers, and here they are in Texas and wherever. They're wearing masks. So there you go.
All righty. Well, Jim. Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, that's really silly. I'm a little disappointed in a lot of the callers trashing New Yorkers and people in the region. But anyway, what are you going to do? But thank you for taking my call, Mike, and you have a great weekend.
All right, same to you. And we're going to switch over to Doc in Illinois. Hello, Doc. Welcome to the show. I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I wanted to touch on something I had heard. I don't know if you heard about it, but apparently there was like some 144,000 votes in Michigan that they thought were suspect. Apparently now they can't find who they were registered to, like, at all. So I'm hearing word that Trump is now going to take Michigan. I don't know if you've heard anything about that or if it's true, but that's just what I've heard.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you hear about that at all?
Yeah, I heard something about that. I mean, all over the country. I mean, there was that story we did where this one county couldn't actually verify the vote because when they ran the ballots through the counting machine again, they got different results. And if there's nothing else that comes out of this, it's the realization that our election system really is messed up. To be most generous about it, it's faulty as all get out. And something does need to be done about that. And again, if Trump pulls this off, I'm going to be pounding on the door of the White House saying, we've got to fix up this mess. We really do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Doc, I'm actually going to let you go because we got a bunch of calls before the Lady Claire. So thank you for the call. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Miles in Maine. Hello, Miles. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, aloha, Michael. I just wanted to comment on what Peter said. I thought it was interesting about Bobby Kennedy and the mafia and that type of thing, but it's kind of ironic that they also at the same time, wanted to get after Jimmy Hoffa every chance they got.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that's because they knew Jimmy Hoffa had a legitimate chance at maybe perhaps becoming the president of the country.
Maybe.
Yeah. yeah, Hoffa, man, he could draw the crowds. And, you know, it's not like it is now. When Hoffa called the strike, you know, the guy in Gdansk wasn't sweeping the floor at the supermarket when Hoffa called the strike. Nobody moved, not a truck, not anything. That's the kind of power he had.
Yes.
And then, you know, Mark mentioned Trump, and it's good to see Mark come around, but, you know, he's still wanting to bash Trump a little bit. Like, I never hear Mark say anything about how Trump just shelved that Open Skies Treaty and everything like that. And you know, Trump's not pushing the vaccine. He's saying the vaccine, and I hear people say this all the time. He's saying the vaccine's available, and if there's overwhelming demand, he'll have the military put it out so all availability is possible. He's not saying he's going to have the military strap you down and give it to you. He's just saying if he has to deliver it by the military because for some whatever reason that they can't deliver the stuff, you know, on time, as we've seen with all these different shipping methods, that he'll have the military deliver it. That's all he's saying, and these people are drawing inferences that aren't there. And Mark,
well, a lot of those inferences are being pushed, you know, by other disinformationalists, and you know, right now, you know, a lot of what Trump says is being distorted by social media. You know, even Twitter, you know, has gone, you know, deleted some of his tweets, and we're talking to the president of the United States, subject to censorship by Twitter, and I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, exactly. I am too. And these people need to quit having their little red herrings with Trump, especially in this time. I mean, you want Biden, that's the choice. It's Trump or Biden. I don't want to hear how Trump didn't do this and he didn't do that. And he didn't, you know, play hopscotch and jump rope and everything like that like I wanted. Here's the choices. You know what I'm saying, Michael? And that's it. It's all this other stuff is ridiculous, you know, catch-22 red herring nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I wanted to address it. You know, I'm trying to think of this clause or statute because when I think of these elections in the Supreme Court, and you will know, I know you will know, but there's something about if public concern outweighs the situation at hand or something, that you have to address the public concern, which I think would be what these elections fall into. And before you answer that, I just want to say, because I don't want to take up any time, but Lady Claire had a show about 2 months ago on the show. She mentioned about the Mormon...
Miles, I got to put you on hold. Miles, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. We're going to come back. We got a few more calls to get through, and then we will have the lovely Lady Claire. And welcome back to our show here, hour number 2, and we've got a few more phone calls to get through. We're talking with Miles in Maine, and Miles, if you could sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, real quick, Michael. So I wanted you to address, so that we can get good clarification here. The clause or whatever it is that says that where public concern outweighs any other factors, that these situations should be addressed. And to me, I'm applying that toward the Supreme Court looking into the voting situation. And then also, finally, I'd like to add with this, and I'll take your response offline, is Lady Claire a couple months ago gave some prepping websites, and I think it was like Mormon prepping and that. And I think it would be good, it's maybe not if she can't do it today, but maybe when she can come back in the next upcoming weeks and she could address that. And I'll take your response offline. Michael, have a great weekend for you and Claire.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's not actually coded anywhere in the law that the needs of the public are the supreme law of the land. It's implied by the election system, where if the government is not doing what we want it to do, we can vote the bastards out. Unfortunately, this last election, I think, has destroyed that illusion for a lot of people. As for prepping, good idea right now. We're seeing a lot of people talking about potential shortages and famine in the coming months. And yeah, anything that you can do to get through that is a good thing. All righty, we're going to go to James in Tokyo. James, Ohio gozaimasu, o genki desu ka? What's on your mind?
Hi, Rivero, first of all, I don't forgive you for not giving the 7,355 love letters to the lovely harp-playing Angel Claire. I mean, excuse me, 7,350.
I burned them all. I'm sorry. I'm a jealous man. You know, I burned them all.
One went to your neighbor in Hawaii, Bruce, and the hairdresser, and he accepted my proposal. But anyway.
Ah, well, good. Congratulations.
I'm worried about Dustin. Thank you, sir. I'm worried about Dustin in New Jersey, either from wearing 3 masks at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I believe that he possibly has passed due to self-carbon monoxide poisoning, or that the Galactic Federation has taken him to Mars to work with other anti-Trumper Marxists. But I'm going to call my friend James T. Kirk from Starfleet Command.
Okay.
And try and get more intelligence on the matter. But I actually want to talk to you about the election a little bit.
Okay.
I believe that Trump is going to turn everything around, in my opinion, with the Supreme Court. And, well, I haven't looked at the news in 2 days, but there were 18 states from 2 days ago. I don't know what it is.
It's 21 now.
It might have went up. But, okay, that's great. And, okay, so let's say it's 21. And so once the 21 states, they do the Supreme Court thing and it turns around in Trump's favor, what I believe that Trump should do, in my personal opinion, is that he should do the Insurrection Act. It's the only way that you're able to ever clean up all of the corruption in America. And like put people in jail, make legal elections, and he has to start a brand new election, even for himself, for people in Congress, for people in the Senate. And I believe that once that happens, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I believe that the Republicans will gain a massive electoral victory in throughout all of America, even in California. And that's the only way that America is able to be right again, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you, except that it's going to take, you know, if Trump decides he's going to crack down on this fraudulent election system, it's going to take many months to overhaul it all. And so I don't think the Supreme Court will see that as a remedy. I think ultimately the most likely outcome is they're going to throw the election into the House of Representatives, where Trump will prevail. So it is a huge, huge mess. But I am hoping that Trump, after this experience, is going to be serious about saying there has to be some reckoning about how these elections are done. He did come into office in 2017 saying that he was going to clean this mess up, but he ran into all this resistance from state election commissions, who he probably now realizes had been part of the election fraud against him in 2016, and certainly were part of the election fraud against him in 2020. So there's going to be a big argument about states' rights versus federal rights, but something really has to be done. We have to get rid of these computer machines. Elections have to go back to being completely transparent and verifiable, and without it, we're going to be a dictatorship.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really upset about Trump about, is that when he did come into the office, he promised to clean up the swamp, and he hasn't really cleaned up, well, what is there, one FBI lawyer, you know, who might go to the joint, but that's about it. And all these people just, you know, he's being attacked left and right, and
well, you know, he wanted the job. You know, I don't really have any sympathy for him.
Well, you got to have sympathy for someone who's trying to help. I mean, I really think he is trying to help. And I'm just upset that he hasn't, you know, put a lot of people away like he said he was. And that's why he's having a lot of the problems now. And once everything does work out, and I think, yeah, as you said, it will go to the House of Representatives or the states or whatever, and he gets it back. there's going to be incredible violence in
Yes,
in America.
unfortunately, there will be.
At least at this time, I believe that that Trump will utilize I don't know, either the Marines or the National Guard to help dissipate it, and I hope he will. I'm sure he will, because he has nothing to lose from it. But anyway, that's all I got to say, and I wish you and that lovely harp-playing angel cutie sitting next to you very happy holidays, and great talking to you again, Mike.
Well, thank you, and Merry Christmas to you. We're going to take one more phone call from Patty in South Florida. Hello, Patty. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike, thank you for letting us know what the Fukushima is going on. My question is, you said there was 21 states that have joined with Ted Cruz's lawsuit?
No, with the Texas lawsuit.
Where's the other 22?
There's another 22 states filed their own brief with the Supreme Court to try and block it. And so we're literally seeing a split down the middle of the country politically. Wow. Yeah.
Because you've educated me, look for what's not there. And who are the rhinos in these other states that haven't joined arms? Because all of our votes don't count based on these 7 states that have gone rogue.
Yes.
Anyway,
well, there was probably fraud in all of the states.
God bless Claire.
Well, thank you very much.
Bless you too.
I mean, there was probably fraud in all of the states in order to make it look like the election was close, because you couldn't have the battleground states, close and then just edge for Biden, and then have the other states with a really, really wide separation. And again, something a lot of people are looking at is how many Republicans won their elections. We're members of the House, governorships, state legislatures. The Republicans did very well, and yet somehow we're expected to believe that Joe Biden pulled off this miracle. Okay, we're going to close the phone lines for a little while here. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting over here next to me is the lovely Lady Claire. And Lady Claire, take it away.
Yes. While we have been fixed on the tremendous trauma of this last election, COVID, et cetera, state lawmakers are attempting some fast ones. And I thought this was a brilliant example of this. There is a New Jersey lawmaker who wants to mandate COVID shots for all kids without exemption. Now, this is State Senator Vitale in New Jersey. And he wants the coronavirus vaccine mandatory for all school-age children, despite, and this is something that makes me go, these kids are the least at risk, Michael.
Yes, they are.
And Pfizer has just issued a warning that if a person has either a drug or food allergy from what they see going on in the UK, they shouldn't get the vaccine. I don't think
Pfizer has also said that whoever is administering the vaccine, they have to have resuscitation equipment because apparently some of the people getting the vaccine are going into anaphylactic shock and their breathing stops.
Not good.
No.
Not good. So I really have to wonder how much of State Senators Vitale's portfolio is all in with the pharmaceutical companies making these vaccines. And second, if in fact this is passed by the New Jersey legislature, how many kids are going to wind up disappearing from public schools and be schooled at home? And I checked it out. Homeschooling is still legal in New Jersey, at least for the moment. I'm sure the senator is going to try to fix that, and I would also be willing to bet that if he and his wife have kids of school age, they're not going to a public school.
No, they probably are not.
No.
They probably are not.
No. It's always interesting to me how the elites want to send down directives from which they will be free.
Well, we've seen it over the last couple of weeks
Oh,
where
yeah.
all of these politicians talking about lockdowns and, no indoor dining, and then they're photographed, having parties in restaurants without masks.
Right,
and,
right.
Do as we say, don't do as we do.
Yeah, well, like Nancy Pelosi with the hairdresser.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that woman got threats. She had to leave the state.
You're talking about the hairdresser.
Yeah, the hairdresser.
Well, she had to shut her shop down.
Yeah,
And
this is just so not right.
Well, Democrats, unfortunately, are proving themselves to be very violence prone.
And that is unfortunate.
It is.
Next, I'd like to take a look at a very interesting stake in Boston Dynamics. Now, Mike and I drive a Hyundai. We love the car.
Yes, we do.
The people who engineer and design these cars really think things through in terms of where stuff is to make the experience of driving as easy for the driver as they possibly can.
It's the best car I've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, even better than Blue Guy or Green Guy.
Yeah.
Those are both Hondas,
Okay.
and they were not bad cars. But the company that has just put a $900 million stake in robot dog maker Boston Robotics is Hyundai. Now, apparently, the group that owns them currently, SoftBank, has kind of unwound the options trading strategy that earned it the name the NASDAQ whale. It's a Japanese telecom VC hybrid, and right now it's unloading bits and pieces of its portfolio to try to generate badly needed liquidity. Now, Reuters reports that SoftBank is unloading Boston Dynamics, the robotics company, known for its terrifying robot dog, Spot, the autonomous robot dog, and it recently made headlines for building a radiation map of Chernobyl. I think that's cool.
Oh, I mean, these are very useful devices. They're cute. I'd love to play with one.
Oh, yeah. If it could be programmed to perhaps be a little bit friendlier and not terribly aggressive.
Well, if it can go to the refrigerator and get me a beer and come back, I'd be happy.
Michael?
Yeah?
You don't drink beer.
That's a minor point there. Okay. All right.
Anyway, the Hyundai Motor Group, the South Korean car maker, has agreed to take an 80% stake in Boston Dynamics. Mike, that's huge.
That is huge.
The deal values the robot maker at $1.1 billion, which means Hyundai paid some $880 million for its stake. It sounds out of its mind on first blush.
Well, Hyundai definitely wants that access to that technology.
Oh,
Maybe their future cars are going to be, maybe they'll have a really working self-driving car.
Could be. And apparently the chairman, Yoo-Sun Chung, has pledged to reduce reliance on traditional car manufacturing. And probably this means less humans.
Yes.
So to accomplish this, the company is exploring methods to streamline its plant operations, cutting reliance on humans and the pesky unions who represent them. Now, Boston Dynamics has already signed up car makers, including Ford, which has leased 2 Spot robots last July as part of a pilot program. Though the details were not clear, Zero Hedge suspects that Ford, like Hyundai, is simply trying to save money on manufacturing and labor. And ideally, the South Koreans see Boston Dynamics as an opportunity to try and remain competitive with their rising Chinese rivals. Now, for the deal to bolster Hyundai's share price, apparently the folks on Wall Street are going to be looking to see if Hyundai can not only benefit internally, but derive profits from leasing Boston Dynamics technology to rivals, like BD has been doing with Ford. And I would say that the future of work on this planet is changing rapidly before our eyes. And we either need to learn to ride the coming wave of automation or get pulled into the undertow. And speaking of technology, are you aware, dear, that the new robot vacuum can spy on private conversations?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it builds a map of your home.
Yeah. And apparently Professor Jun Han from NUS Computer Science said that the LiDAR phone The sensor that allows the robot vacuum to navigate around the house safely can be repurposed into a laser-based microphone to eavesdrop on private conversations. That blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
The proliferation of smart devices, including smart speakers and smart security cameras, has increased the avenues for hackers to snoop on our private moments, said Siram Sami. This kid's a doctoral student working with Junhan, who is the assistant professor at NUS Computer Science. And Sami continued, our method shows it is now possible to gather sensitive data just by using something as innocuous as a household robot vacuum cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And their work apparently demonstrated the urgent need to find practical solutions to prevent malicious attacks. And as explained by the research team, here is how a common robot vacuum cleaner can spy on your most private of conversations. Now, the core of the LiDAR phone attack method is the LiDAR sensor. It's a device which fires out an invisible scanning laser and creates a map of its surroundings. By reflecting lasers off common objects, such as a dustbin or takeaway bag located near a person's computer speaker or television soundbar, the attacker could gain information about the original sound that made the object's surface vibrate. And apparently, using applied signal processing and deep learning algorithms, speech could be recovered from audio data and sensitive information could potentially be obtained. And here's how they did it, Mike.
Yes.
In their experiments, the research used a common robot vacuum cleaner with two sources of sound. One was the voice of a person reading out numbers played from a computer speaker, while the other source was music clips from television shows, which played through a television soundbar. Now, the team collected more than 19 hours of recorded audio files and passed them through the deep learning algorithms that were trained to either match human voices or identify musical sequences. The system was then able to detect the digits being spoken out loud, which could be your credit card number or bank account numbers.
Okay, well, we're going to have to take a break here for commercials.
Okay.
And meanwhile, I'm going to go out and take a sledgehammer to our Roomba.
Okay, got it.
And welcome back to our show and a little bit of Christmas music, courtesy of the lovely Lady Claire. And you wanted to pick up, finish this story.
Yes, I could. And we were talking about just an average cleaning robot. We know what they are. And the system was able to detect the digits being spoken aloud, which could constitute a victim's credit card or bank account information. And then music clips from television shows could potentially disclose the victim's viewing preferences or political orientation.
Well, most cable systems are already collecting that
Yeah.
information anyway on terms of what channel you're watching.
But Mike,
Yeah.
I mean, this blew me absolutely out of the water. The system achieved a classification accuracy rate of 91% when recovering spoken digits and a 90% accuracy rate when classifying music clips. These results are significantly higher than a random guess of 10%. Wow, that's scarily impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the only way one can have a private conversation right now is under a blanket with a flashlight using sign language.
Yep.
And I find that more than a little bit creepy.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to go to the story which, really bothered me. A Pennsylvania principal was fired over conservative Facebook memes, and she sued the school district.
As well she should.
Yeah, and she's suing her school district after saying she was fired for posting conservative memes on her personal Facebook account, which had nothing to do with what she did as a principal. She seeks to return to her position and ask $500,000 for emotional turmoil due to her ouster. And Amy Sachs had been teaching for 20 years, and she posted on Thanksgiving Day that she was fired by the Perkiomen Valley School District after Superintendent Barbara Russell, and this is in quotes, decided that the First Amendment freedom of speech has no place in public schools and that teachers and administrators are unfit to serve if they hold and express political beliefs that are to the right of center.
Which basically underscores the fact that our modern schools are, in fact, liberal indoctrination centers.
Yeah. And I frankly hope this lady wins her lawsuit. I think she should.
I agree.
I mean, it was nothing she was doing as a principal. It was nothing she was doing or on school time or with school equipment, something she did at home and was private.
Yes.
You know?
Well, no, there's nothing private about Facebook, but
Yes.
it's still,
Yeah.
her personal
yeah.
life and her personal opinions. And
she did it as a private citizen.
yeah, that's
which is
exactly
what I
my
wanted to
point
say.
here. You know, your
Yeah.
employer, does not have a right to tell you how to think and what to post and what to say when you're off hours, when you're off the clock.
Yeah.
But we're seeing more and more situations where that is in fact being adopted as the new normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of self-censorship right now, where people
Not
might
around
have
here.
Not in this household. I know, but I know that I'm feeling it once in a while when I'm posting, and do I go there? And there are times when I might go around it, but it's a scary feeling in this country.
It is a very scary feeling,
And I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that there is a T-shirt floating around, and I think I want one for both of us, and it says "Make Orwell fiction again."
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. But I'm seeing this. I am seeing that unless it is a very specific narrative that goes along with the governmental narrative,
Mm-hmm.
which may or may not be truthful and factual. And this is why the governments around the world hate the internet, because there can be cases made where the narrative is nowhere close to the truth.
Well, remember when the internet was still back, as the ARPANET from the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency,
DARPA.
it was never intended to be made available to the public. They didn't want the public to have access to this.
Oh, heavens no.
It was, defense, military bases, defense contractors, and universities engaged in military contracts. And then in the 70s was the Great Revolt, where the ARPANET became the internet, and the government's been trying to figure out how to deal with it ever since. And so they've set up these, giant corporate social media companies and lured everybody to sort of put all their traffic through these so that they could impose gatekeepers on them again.
Yep. But people
I miss
are walking.
the days of Usenet.
People are walking away from the gatekeepers, and they're walking toward services like Parlay.
Yes.
And I think this is healthy. I think that there may be some antitrust lawsuits coming up in the not too distant future.
Well, they're certainly going after Facebook, yes.
Yeah, and they should. What happened with the information about Hunter Biden was just abysmal. And it looks like Attorney General Barr was in some ways complicit with making that happen, Mike.
Well, apparently he was here. And, the TV network sat on the story to help Joe Biden. Now they're being forced to cover it here. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252. And Claire, what is your next story?
Well, the next story comes to us from Zero Hedge. And the headline is, NATO is determined to find threats and challenges to justify its existence. I think I would have gone a little further. NATO is determined to create threats and challenges to justify its existence.
Wow.
And apparently government and media propaganda has very firmly convinced most of the people in the West that Russia invaded Crimea. And the truth has dissolved in the swirling big lie, which has been out there since, 2014, I believe, is when it happened. Yeah. Now, folks, this never, ever happened. When Crimea's presidency was given to Poroshenko in an election that was just about as crooked as our last one was,
Mhm.
okay?
That bad.
That bad. And the people of Crimea were scratching their heads, and they did something remarkable. Not a drop of blood was spilled, and I think this is incredible. They had two referendums in this country. One, did we want to stick with Ukraine under the current circumstances? And about 90% of their citizenry said no, yet.
Yes.
And the other question that was asked was, would you like to join the Soviet Federation? And
The Russian republics, the Soviet Union was gone by then.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, Russian Federation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And about 90-odd% said yes. And rather than express this as a wonderful exercise in people's democracy, the Obama administration lied that Russia had absorbed it. Okay, never happened. It was never taken away from Ukraine by force. And what they did was to propagandize this big lie to get Americans angry at Russia and see Russia as the perpetually bad guy.
And now they're doing it to China.
Yeah, okay. Now, March 2014, the ethnically Russian province of Crimea declared itself to be separate from Ukraine. And this little country has 2.4 million inhabitants. And there was an invitation for the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And the government of Crimea said, come, send representatives to monitor. But this organization refused to do so. Why? Because it was clear, it was transparent, and it worked.
Yes.
And the development was strongly condemned by the United States. Now, the people in Crimea are Russian-speaking, Russian-cultured, and Russian-educated. So they voted to dissolve the political bands which had connected them with another in order to rejoin Russia. Now, it would be very strange if they did wish accession to a country that not only welcomes their kinship, empathy, and loyalty, but is economically benevolent concerning their future. But the propaganda from 2014 still goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a very intriguing policy paper titled NATO 2030, United for a New Era, which makes it very clear that the U.S.-NATO military alliance is now intent on strengthening NATO's political role and relevant instruments to address current and future threats and challenges to alliance security emanating from all strategic directions. The sky is falling.
Yes.
And the wide-ranging objective opens the gates for NATO to meddle even more deeply in the affairs of countries that have nothing to do with the North Atlantic and continue its confrontation of Russia by intensifying the military buildup around its borders and escalating provocative operations by land, sea, and air. Now, there is a prominent assertion in the United for a New Era paper that states NATO stands as history's most successful alliance, which deserves comment and some laughter. The problem is stopping laughing because of all of the pain and killing and mess this organization has created. Now, this is the military grouping that is now stumbling and fumbling and bumbling its way out of Afghanistan, where it has achieved precisely nothing in the way of establishing stability. On November 17th, Secretary General Stoltenberg tried to put the best face on the shambles of NATO's humiliating retreat by declaring, "We now face a difficult decision. We have been in Afghanistan for almost 20 years, and no NATO ally wants to stay any longer than necessary, but at the same time, the price for leaving too soon or in an uncoordinated way could be very high." What he didn't say was that President Trump had not spoken to him or any NATO member about his decision to initiate precipitous withdrawal of U.S. troops, and that the country is, as noted by the Council on Foreign Relations, in a state of civil war that is worsening. Approaching anarchy, actually, Mike, with, for example, the New York Times recording that in the period of 22 to 26 November, at least 19 pro-government forces and 33 civilians in Afghanistan were killed in that week. The deadliest attack took place in Bamiyan, which is considered one of the most secure provinces in Afghanistan, killing 18 and wounding 59 others in blasts in that provincial capital. In Kabul, the capital, 10 civilians were killed and 51 others wounded when 23 rockets were fired by a small truck. And the rockets hit different areas all over the city. Now, Stoltenberg makes the boast that NATO is history's most successful alliance, encompassing nearly 1 billion people and half of global PD. But after GDP, I'm sorry, thank you. But after 20 years in Afghanistan, it can't stop, seemingly, a few bands of guerrillas from firing rockets at the nation's capital. Now, in this paper, it's a 67-page position paper, NATO 2030. There is one reference to Libya. And it is notable that it mentions the country only once in the entire document, stating that instability in Libya, Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan continues to generate illegal migration that is acutely felt throughout Europe, but especially by those allies bordering the Mediterranean. Now, this is certainly true. I mean, there can be no doubt about that.
No, absolutely not.
But there is zero mention of how and why Libya became unstable and what part NATO played in destroying the country and thus generating the massive suffering now being experienced by countless innocent people in the region. Thank you, history's most successful alliance, for reducing the country to a state of anarchic mayhem. What can we expect next in the NATO playbook? Wait for it. Of course, it's going to be Russia and China.
Yes. No. At the same time, that's going to be a trick.
The NATO 2030 travesty alleges that after the end of the Cold War, NATO attempted to build a meaningful relationship and partnership with Russia without mentioning that in 1999, NATO added Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic to help surround Russia. Then in 2004 came Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. To increase the net drawing around Russia's borders, Albania and Croatia were added in 2009. And lastly came the jokes of Montenegro in 2017 and North Macedonia in March of this year. Stability? Come on. I mean, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And the world has been warned that although the U.S. NATO military conglomerate has been incompetent and destabilizing force in its military exercises, it is searching and almost, I think, creating threats and challenges to justify its existence. It won't find them because they don't exist, but that won't stop it from looking, blustering, and thus creating even more instability around the globe, while NATO stands united for a new era. Now, there are some issues that we do have primarily with China and Russia.
Yes.
We are behind China militarily, but it's
Yes.
not the Chinese government's fault, but ours. The government will continue to accept defective, obsolete products from the business tycoons who play golf with presidents.
Yes.
And just offer up and proffer up all of this money, both overt and covert, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
To get someone elected. And it's very hard to scream at a guy who owns a business presenting weapons to the U.S. military when you play golf with him or her as president. And the last time I checked, Mike, doesn't the contraction of NATO stand for North Atlantic Treaty Organization?
Yes,
Did I miss something?
No,
there?
no, that's what it stands for.
Dang.
And maybe they need to change their name.
Yeah.
Engulf and Devour or
Well,
something.
you know, I remember there used to be a store called Toys R Us. Well, NATO has morphed into this killing machine globally and really should be called for what it is. Destabilization and death are us. And getting back to China, and again, this is a gentleman to whom I hope our listeners and viewers are paying some attention. His name is Pepe Escobar. And this article talks about the U.S. hits, search, and destroy policy against the new Silk Roads. And this comes to us from Pepe Escobar via the Asian Times. Now, 7 years after being launched by President Xi Jinping, first in Astana and then in Jakarta, the new Silk Roads or Belt and Road Initiative are driving American politicians absolutely batty.
Well, it's going to just change the global economics of shipping. It's going to, China's going to be able to manufacture products and get them to Europe much easier than American products can get there.
And what it is, I mean, it's an exit ramp offered by Beijing to a global South permanently indebted to the IMF World Bank exploitation. This is going to stop that. Now, in the old order, politico-military elites were routinely bribed in exchange for unfettered corporate access to their nation's resources, coupled with go-go privatization schemes and outright austerity for the masses. This is referred to as structural adjustments, where the elites get more, and the guys with the lunch buckets get far less.
Yes.
And then BRI became the new game in town in terms of infrastructure building, and it offered an alternative to the, if you will, imperial footprint. Now, the Chinese model allows all manner of parallel taxes, sales, rents, leases, and profits. Now, what this means, Mike, is extra sources of income for host governments with an important corollary: freedom from the hardcore neoliberal diktats of the IMF World Bank. Now, that is what is really at the beating heart of this Chinese win-win.
Absolutely.
Moreover, BRI's overall strategic focus on infrastructure development, not only Eurasia, but also Africa, encompasses a major geopolitical game changer. BRI is positioning large parts of the global South to become completely independent from Western imposed debt. For scores of nations, this is a real matter of national interest. In this sense, BRI should be regarded as the ultimate post-colonialist mechanism. BRI, in fact, bristles with Sun Tzu's simplicity applied to geoeconomics. One statement that apparently is made: never interrupt the enemy when he's making a mistake.
Yes.
In this case, enslaving the global South via perpetual debt. Then use his own weapons, in this case financial help, to destabilize his preeminence. Now, none of the above is going to be a soothing sound to the West, which will keep spitting out a 24/7 deluge of red alerts deriding BRI as poorly defined, badly managed, and visibly failing. Really? Visibly, of course, only for the exceptionalists. And predictably, the people making these claims feed on a toxic mix of arrogance and crass ignorance of Chinese history and culture. Now, Zhu Li, who is the president of the Department of International Strategy at the Institute of World Economics and Politics at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, has shown that after the Belt and Road Initiative was proposed, China's diplomacy changed from maintaining a low profile to becoming more proactive in global affairs. But the policy of partnership rather than alliance has not changed, and it's really unlikely to change in the future.
Yes.
The indisputable fact is that the system of alliance diplomacy preferred by Western countries is the choice of a few countries in the world, and most countries would like a more non-aligned diplomacy. Beside, the vast majority of them are developing countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Now, Atlanticists, that's how Escobar refers to people who hate what the Chinese are doing, are desperate because the system of alliance diplomacy is on the wane. The overwhelming majority of the global South is now being changed as a newly energized, non-aligned movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a major change. The rest of the world is aware of how they've been exploited by the Western-centric financial system. China's offering them an alternative, and they're definitely turning toward it. And that's why China is a threat to the so-called American way of life. I know. And, they're a threat to the billionaires. All righty, we're going to take a phone call here. Ryan in Cleveland, we're probably going to have to take you through this next commercial break, but what's on your mind?
I was wondering, you know, these liberal people that I know, they're saying, well, if they're not going to accept the late votes coming in like through the mailman, that's because they were coming late because Donald Trump ordered that a lot of the separating machines at the post office be taken out so they wouldn't be able to separate the mail quick enough to deliver it. Is this true or false, or
no, that's false.
Or...
The order to remove machines that were declared surplus came from the Postmaster General.
The Postmaster General, is he like in cahoots with Trump, or he just decided to do that, or?
Well, he decided to do it, but it was basically Trump who basically said, don't make any changes in the postal system until after the election is over. Anyway.
Anyways, without him saying it. Thanks.
All right. Well, Ryan, thank you for the phone call, Ryan. We got to take a break for commercials. We're going to come up on the last segment of our program after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today. And Claire, you have another story for us.
Oh, yes, I do. We have been hearing much about potential Chinese influence on American politics and how that's working, especially with the Fang Fang fiasco.
Yes.
Yes. So here's another fun fact about Facebook. Facebook Fact Checker is funded by Chinese money through TikTok. Now, this comes to us from Peter Svab via the Epoch Times. Now, Facebook portrays its army of fact checkers as independent. The money behind at least one carries a distinct taint. One fact checker, Lead Stories, is partially paid through its partnership with TikTok, a social media platform run by a Chinese company with full allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. TikTok is currently being probed by American authorities as a national security threat. Now, TikTok's owner, Beijing-based ByteDance, has had its own censorship issues. In September of 2019, The Guardian reported that TikTok instructed its moderators to censor certain videos that mention topics considered sensitive by the Chinese regime, such as the Tiananmen Square massacre, Falun Gong, a spiritual practice that has been severely persecuted in China since 1999. The report was based on leaked documents detailing the app's moderation guidelines. Now, TikTok responded at the time that such policies were placed in May of 2019 and are no longer in use. But in December, the platform came under fire again for suspending the account of a U.S. teen who posted a video criticizing Beijing's suppression of Uyghur Muslims in Chinese far western Xinjiang region. Kind of reminds you of what we're not supposed to see or hear during the last election cycle,
yes,
does it not?
How oriental we are getting.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're almost at the end of the show here, and I've been asked to make an announcement. The RBN streams are going to go down briefly at the end of this program for maintenance, and then after that, Harley Schlanger will be on with John Stadmiller, so you're probably going to want to take some time to listen to that as well. And yeah, we're just about there here. So all I can say is have a great weekend here. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It has never been more important. We're trying to upgrade equipment. We're trying to fix the problems we've been having with whatreallyhappened.com so that it operates a lot more smoothly than it has been. And, all of this takes effort, hosting bills and rents and the rest of it.
All of it. And please, I know that we're getting into sort of that manic state right before Christmas and the craziness.
Yes.
Pull back a little bit and
Take a deep
try to
breath.
be as unfailingly kind
Yes.
as you can to people around you.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are dealing with a lot of pressure right now. Please be kind.
Absolutely, especially to those who have really felt the bite of the lockdowns. we need to basically go back to being communities of taking care of each other.
Amen.
And not sitting on our rear ends waiting for the government to give us back a tiny, tiny piece of the money they take away from us. All right, so have a great weekend, and we're going to be back on Monday. So aloha, America.